he was making this, and he'd obviously been doing the dissection at the time that he was painting the Mona Lisa. That seems so extraordinary to me.
This dissection, or it's really not a dissection, it's a great synthesis of everything that he was learning about the human body, is, I think, almost the most remarkable anatomical drawing ever made. These are drawings about what makes a living body a living body. And one of the things he's most interested in his anatomy is this cycle of life, death, and maturity. I think he's doing Leda at the same time, this painting about generation. Here is this wonderful image of a bird, we know Leonardo's obsession with flight, mating with a woman and producing babies from eggs. What a subject for Leonardo. You know, this is absolutely perfect. It's all the mysteries of generation, all in one package. I think if you put, as we've done literally, this together and think that Leonardo, who is this great sculptor of things in his mind, in a sense saw this inside her body, then I think you suddenly think, wow, that is how Leonardo looked at it. He thinks he's really getting to the mystery of life, the cyclical nature of the death of things and the birth of things. Of course, this then refracts back beautifully into the landscape and the notion of the cyclical change of things, how landscape changes over vast periods of time.
When you see a scene of the primeval or primordial world behind the person being portrayed, it immediately puts you in mind of creation, of early forms that will evolve into what we are today. Now, in the foreground, you are looking at a woman who represents exactly the same thing.
It strikes me as it's a very unstable picture. You have these towering mountains behind. They're overhanging. They look like they might fall down, tumble down any time. The lakes are very full. It looks like they might come tumbling over the dam and wash away the bridge. And I do wonder whether what he's depicting here is how he imagined the Arno Valley would have looked in previous times. There is some very clear evidence in the notebooks that he thought there used to be a lake where Florence stood, and there was a lake lower down the valley as well. And maybe this is what he's seeing with these two lakes. He's imagining what the landscape used to look like.
So what's going on here? How does the Mona Lisa connect with the strange primeval landscape behind her? It's time to get out of the city and go back to where it all began, the Tuscan landscape where Leonardo spent his childhood and formative years. The valley of the River Arno wasn't just his playground, it was his laboratory. Here he studied the principles of flight, the dynamics of water, of light and perspective. So is the apparently fantastical landscape behind the Mona Lisa real or imaginary? Here, 30 miles from Florence, the River Arno is crossed by the Buriano Bridge. Is this the bridge behind the Mona Lisa?
What we do know for sure is that Leonardo knew the bridge and the surrounding area intimately. The Buriano had a vital strategic importance to the city of Arezzo. And just a year before beginning work on the Mona Lisa, Leonardo was sent here as a military engineer to the infamous warlord Cesare Borgia.
And only minutes away from the Buriano Bridge, there is another connection with the Mona Lisa. This epic landscape is known to locals as the Valley of Hell. These primeval rock formations rise hundreds of feet out of nowhere to form a ridge running some 30 miles along the Arno River. The rocks appear frequently in his notebooks, and there are similar forms in the backgrounds of other paintings. the Virgin of the Rocks. The Virgin and St. Anne.
Little rivulet streams have carved their way down through these rocks and formed the amazing shapes that you see today. And that's, I'm sure, what Leonardo understood had happened. The Mona Lisa gives a very clear sense of time passing, I think, particularly in the landscape in the background. There you have a clear depiction of the geological cycle. You have the river starting up in the mountains, these very jagged, unstable mountains. It wends its way down, bringing the sediments with it, until it eventually gets to the sea. And Leonardo had this idea that it then was taken back up to the mountains again and would start again. So you have this continuity, this continual cycle of geological time forever, really.
In Leonardo's time, the natural world was regarded as a heathen wilderness, best avoided by God-fearing people. But Leonardo was not God-fearing. Like his contemporary, Christopher Columbus, Leonardo was an explorer. He had an insatiable curiosity to observe and chart the unknown world.
I came one day to the mouth of a great cavern. I had never been here before, never been aware of its existence. I stood for a time peering in to see what forms had been created there by nature, but the darkness of the cave was deep. I felt fear and desire, fear of the mysterious cavern, desire to see whether there might be any marvelous thing within its walls.
What is it?
It's a whale.
Think. How many years this beast has ploughed its way through the oceans, chasing the tuna fish, buffeting the ships, creating great storms in its wake.
Oh, time, swift destroyer of all things living, how many kings, how many peoples have you brought low since this creature was flung here to die? Its bared bones become the columns to support a mountain.
He's at the mouth of the cave and he's afraid to go in, but his curiosity is pulling him in. And ironically, what does he find when he gets in there? He finds the fossil of a great fish, very likely a whale, and the beginnings, therefore, of the earth. Everything is tied in his work. The search for the maternal power of generation and then the perpetuation of a species.
Here's another sea creature. 1,000 more.
These shellfish once lived underneath the ocean. So how do you think they got up here, on the top of a mountain?
The Great Flood? No.
According to the Bible, fossils were carried onto the top of mountains by Noah's flood. But to Leonardo, this was nonsense, because fossils were not just found in one, but many different layers of rock.
Did the Great Flood sweep them up in one mass and line them up in neat little rows?
So what he realizes is that it was just a coming and a going of the sea. As the sea would come and wash over the land at some point and deposit these fossils, and then it would wash away again, and the fossils wouldn't be deposited. And therefore you would gradually build up these layers. And this was incredibly important, because it was another 150 years, really, before this theory was, we call it the law of superposition, before people realized that that's what actually happened.
Such heretical observations were unpublishable, but they provided Leonardo with a new theory of creation.
Only observation, he said, is the key to understanding, and his observations told him that the earth could not have been created in 6 days, that it took thousands